canceling student debt, pushing more spending, hiking taxes. Democrats said to be plotting their next move ahead of the election. Reaction now from Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, and he sits on the Finance and Budget Committee. Senator, thanks for joining us. Obviously, it's a mad dash, a wild scramble there, and to a certain degree, I wonder why President Biden hasn't done this already. He referenced bite-sized versions of the Build Back Better plan. He knows he's got to deal with Senator Manchin and perhaps other Democrats. You think they'll get anything done?
Well, if you're talking about Build Back Better, I think the country's really fortunate that 50 Republicans plus Manchin are saving us from pouring more gasoline on the fires of inflation. I had 17 county meetings last week in Iowa, and inflation came up at every one of them. I think it's one of the main reasons, maybe the main reason, that Biden's poll numbers are so bad. And I would think that they would start realizing that when people like Larry Summers, former Secretary of Treasury in the Democrat administration, says that way back a year ago in January, we had already spent too much money and the economy was turning around before Christmas 2020, that you're going to have inflation. Nobody listened. And like McConnell said, $3 trillion more were spent. And that's just feeding the fires of inflation.
There's no doubt.
That's what.
No, yes, sir. I was going to say there's no doubt about that. Our wages in this country, real wages, went negative immediately thereafter and have stayed there. You know what I thought was interesting, too? It wasn't just Larry Summers, but a lot of folks from the Obama administration, Jason Furman and Ratner and so many others. So the Biden administration started off initially saying it was a high-class problem. We should be happy. It's a good thing. Then they said it was transitory. And then they blamed a few other things before they pivoted to Putin. And now they're saying, well, what's the Republicans' plan? So they're trying to throw the ball back in your court. What do you say?
Well, our plan would be simply this, that a good share of this inflation is because of the high gasoline and energy costs. And on day one, he stopped the XL pipeline, stopped drilling new wells, North Slope of Alaska, public lands in the United States, offshore Atlantic, and then put regulations on fracking, and then tell the bankers not to loan. Just think what that does to the morale of people that have been giving us cheap energy. We were an energy independent nation January 19th, and then January 20th of 2021, we become energy dependent, and there's no reason for it. And so we Republicans would say, just reverse the terrible energy problem that you put this country in and get the price of gasoline down at least $1.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing to actually have all this underneath our feet and to know how to drill for it. Another scheme I want to get your opinion on is canceling student debt. Now, the notion is if $1.5 trillion is owed, and it doesn't have to be paid back, it would somehow find its way into the economy. It's flawed in many ways, but certainly it's an odd way to say let's help inflation, which was caused by too much government spending in the first place.
Well, if it's paid back, it'll find its way into the economy as well. So, Charles, where do you end paying off debt if you're going to relieve student debt? Are you going to relieve the debts of some low-income people on their cost of their house or their car or their credit card? Where does it end? That's a slippery slope. Besides, if you assume debt, you've got to have some responsibility for paying that off. That's the choice you made. It was a free choice you made. And I think when it comes to education, everybody ought to have some skin in the game if you're going to do that.
There's an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal quoting the co-founder of FedEx, Fred Smith. Now, he said, had we actually passed Build Back Better the way President Biden wanted to, we'd have 25% inflation rather than 9 or 10%. That's an astonishing number. What do you think of that?
Well, I think he's an outstanding executive of a very good company, does a lot of good for our economy. I think we're beginning to hear economists say we're already in stagflation. Now, that's language from Carter presidency. High inflation and a bad economy. Now, the bad economy hasn't started right yet, but some economists say we're on that road right now and we don't know it. Maybe it's just like transitory inflation.
Yeah.
Maybe we're having transitory stagflation. And then in a few weeks, we'll realize it's the real stagflation.
Yeah, it's a painful thing. We hadn't gone through it since the 1970s, and a lot of people who are alive today have no idea. Hopefully we will skirt that. I want to ask you about some news that broke not long before the show came on. United States District Court, Middle District of Florida, Tampa Division, essentially striking down President Biden's mask mandate. The court concludes that the mask mandate exceeds the CDC's statutory authority and violates the procedures required for agency rulemaking under the APA. It's not the first time President Biden's administration has lost one like this in court. Do you think we'll get some sanity when it comes to these masks?
Well, I sure hope so. And a federal judge made that injunction nationwide. So it's going to accomplish the same thing that a vote I cast and about 53 or 54 senators cast that said mask mandate should go away anyway. That vote was in March. Of course, Pelosi's not going to take that up. But we've been saved once again by the checks and balances of government. And that is a judge stepping in to say that the president exceeded his authority.
Senator, here we are heading toward the midterms. We were promised during the campaign trail a different sort of presidency, where somehow we unite the nation. And, maybe I'm a sucker. I always want to believe that's going to happen. Maybe I have too much faith in politicians and on either side, but it never seems to happen. In fact, it seems to be getting precipitously worse. Why is that?
Are you just talking about the partisanship, or are you talking about a promise that Biden made and didn't keep?
Well, I'm talking about the promise that the president's made and didn't keep, but also what's happened in this nation at large. That the way we're a fractured nation, a severely fractured nation, and it happens on every single subject, every single topic. It's very rare we come together on anything anymore.
Would you, as a journalist, believe me when I say that controversy makes news? First of all, I want to admit I agree with you. There's too much partisanship, but there's not quite as much as people think, because journalists always want to talk about the fighting that goes on in Washington.
Okay.
Just like Republicans don't talk.
I'm sorry,
to
Senator.